Now, I do not want you to confuse today's sermon with last week's sermon. The message last week was dealing with your Christian growth. You're saved, you've asked Christ into your life, but we were dealing with your Christian growth and how serious and critical it is that so you take certain steps. So that was totally different than today. Today we're talking about Jesus plus nothing. Everyone say, Jesus plus nothing. Say it again. Jesus plus nothing. We're going to the book of Galatians. By the way, the book of Galatians is probably my favorite book in all of the New Testament. If it's not, I'd have trouble picking one that I would think was better. Galatians, we're going to look at chapter 1, verse 1. And I'm going to open the book of Galatians to you and trust that you will read it with a different light from now on. Verse 6, chapter 1, the book of Galatians. I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ, and you've moved into another gospel, which is not another. But there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. But verse 8, but though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. Verse 9. I'm going to repeat what I said, so I'm going to say it again. If any man preach any other gospel unto you than that you have received, let him be accursed. For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. Now this message is going to make some of you angry. And some of you it's going to set free for the rest of your life. Freedom. What does it take to become a Christian? I mean, what is the bare minimum, the very least that you can do to become a Christian? All right, let me put that. What reduced to its lowest common denominator? What do you have to do to become a Christian? Galatians is Paul's message of justification. And that's just a big word that simply means right standing with God. It means salvation. It's the message of your salvation, your right standing with God. It's a legal declaration that God makes about your life. Now, what do you have to do to have God make this legal declaration about your life? We are justified. We are made in right standing with God by a simple act of our faith in Jesus Christ alone. Period. End of subject. But I'm going to tell you some scary things. Religion is Jesus plus something. Religion, that's religion. Denominationalism is religion. It's Jesus plus something. Salvation is Jesus plus nothing. Now, Paul is dealing with what he calls the perversion of the gospel. Perversion is when we take something that God intended for one purpose and we turn it into a purpose of our own making, our own choosing. We choose something, we pervert something because we change the use of it from what God intended. So he is dealing with a perversion of the gospel. Let me tell you what the problem was. The early church was basically all Jewish. Church at Jerusalem. When the Gentiles came into the church, the Jewish believers had a crisis on their hand. Because the Jews had all of this religious tradition. They had the law of Moses. They had been circumcised. They had all of this moral training. So they had a head start. They knew what it was to walk with God. They knew that God had some requirements. So they had a head start on these new Gentile believers. Now let me bring it into today. People who were raised in church, they grew up in church, been in church for years, they understand church culture. How many have heard the term streetwise kids? We have people who grow up in church and they become church wise. They know how to manipulate the system. They know how to adapt to the culture that they happen to be in at the time. They know how to fit into the denominational rules and structure. Now, into the church then. Now, like a church like this one, where we have a massive influx of new people, pagans. How many know that we've all been there? How many know most of us still are there? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. So into the church comes a whole bunch of new believers. They're sleeping around. They're doing drugs. They don't know how to dress. They don't know the religious language. They don't know how to fit into the culture. How many of you know every group has its own language? How many know doctors have a language? Anybody here understand doctors? With the exception of Natalie. It is. I mean, no lawyers have their own language. You can't understand a lawyer. How many of you know that Christians have their own language? Preachers have. We talk terms like justification. He imputes to us righteousness. We have our own words that we use. And we do things. We know the culture. We go to church. We raise our hands. We clap our hands. We say, yes, hallelujah. And the pagan's sitting there saying, They don't know what's going on. Let me give you an example. You may as well relax because I'm going to preach till I get through. We came to Joplin in 1972. And why? Sometimes I think God does not have good judgment. And other times I know He doesn't. For some reason, we started attracting the hippie crowd. How many remember the hippies? How many was one? All right. We started attracting. We didn't know nothing about hippies. We know they dressed funky. Oh, that guys had earrings and long hair and they smoked dope and all kinds of stuff. But now listen, they started coming into the church. And they didn't know how to dress. I mean, I will never forget Missy. She was one of the first. You remember Missy, don't you? Missy came in. Now, but you understand, They had a culture of their own, a subculture. And when one of them found something that was great, they'd go tell all their friends, man, you got to come and see this. You got to come to church with me. Man, you got to be, you got to be there. And they'd come. They were looking for something to do anyway. So here come this massive influx. Missy come in. She had on hip huggers down to, well, down low. She had on a little old halter top. I thought she'd have done about as well with 3 Band-Aids. But what happened? By the way, I got to finish about Missy. Missy got saved. She hit that altar. She was bawling and squalling. And here come this lady, Mills. What was her name? Wilma Mills. Very wealthy. I mean very, very ultra wealthy people. She was there with a fur coat. Made up to the, makeup, hair, diamonds. You know, when she moved her hand or arm, just lights flashed everywhere. And I looked down, and here was Wilma kneeling at the altar with Missy. I looked up. Wilma had tears running, mascara running, makeup was a mess. And she would just had her arms around Missy and they was crying together. But that was rare, because here's where I'm headed with this. The traditional religious crowd did not know how to react to this influx of people that didn't know how they were supposed to act. Now, these Christians, the early church, was basically made up of Jewish people who had all of this religious background. And they did not know how to deal with these new believers, Gentile believers. The problem was circumcision. When Paul went to Jerusalem and reported what God was doing among the Gentiles, it caused a riot among those Jewish believers. Paul is bringing them uncircumcised pagans into the temple. Now, see, you have to understand, circumcision was an explosive situation. It was as explosive in the early church as what abortion is today. It was explosive, man. Circumcision to the Jews was a sign of the covenant that God had made with Father Abraham. And circumcision preceded the 10 Commandments by 490 years. God made a covenant with Abraham. There were no Jews. They weren't called Jews then. That became later after the tribe of Judah separated off and they became known as Jews. 10 tribes got lost and we're not going there right now. They were called Hebrews, wanderers. God went to a man by the name of Abraham. He said, I want you to leave this land, Ur of the Chaldees. I want you to go to a place that I'll show you. And if you'll do that, every place that the sole of your foot treads will be yours and belong to your descendants. Abraham said, I don't have any children. I can't have. God said, you don't worry about children. I'll worry about the children. I'll give you descendants that will number as the stars of the heaven and the sands of the sea. Will you do it? Abraham said, yes, I'll go. God said, okay. But this is a blood covenant. There must be shedding of blood. Now, I don't know how you read the Bible. When I read it, I put myself in the story. If I'm reading about Samson, I'm Samson. I'm killing lions with my bare hands. I'm killing 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. I mean, I'm there. Put myself into this story of Abraham. This has got to be a blood covenant. Here's what I want you to do. Now, you're Abraham. You want me to cut the end off of my what? Now, I just lost some of you there. You're wondering, what am I doing here and how do I get out? Well, what would you have said? I know what I would have said. The problem then and the problem today, if salvation is Jesus plus something, what is that something going to be? And if salvation is Jesus plus something, who is going to decide what that something is going to be? Now, the early church had a problem because the Jews were trying to make salvation Jesus plus circumcision, because they could not mentally get by the fact that if you're going to be a seed of Abraham, you had to follow the seed, you had to be circumcised. This was a problem. Now, who's going to decide? Joel Osteen? T.D. Jakes? Joyce Myers? I know. Let's have Al Sharpton. Or Jesse Jackson. I know. If it's Jesus plus something, let's let Mack Evans decide. I know you do not want to go there. All right, let's expand it a little bit. If salvation is Jesus plus something, let's let the Baptists decide. How about the Methodists? Presbyterians, Catholics, Church of Christ, Mormons, Assemblies of God, Charismatics. Who's going to decide what that something is? I attended a Baptist university. I was pastoring a small Assembly of God church that we had opened up. It had been out of business for years. We opened it up. I was pastoring an Assembly of God church, both of which, the college, the university, and the Assemblies of God, were not just conservative, they were ultra conservative. In fact, at that time in the state of Louisiana, to be a member of an Assembly of God church, you had to sign a pledge card that said you would not play cards, even old maid. You could not dance, even with your wife. You could not smoke, go to movies, or drink. Now, how many of you know that set real well with me? I made fun of them. I said, that's your marching song. We don't smoke and we don't chew. We don't run with those who do. Sound off, 1, 2, sound. Who decided that? Who decided decided you couldn't play cards, dance, smoke, go to movies, or drink? There is not one word about any of those 5 things in the Bible. Not one verse. Show me one verse. Anybody, I challenge you, show me one verse. There's not one. So who decided that? And who gave them the right to decide that? That was the problem. It's still a problem today. Who are we going to let decide? Mormons? Holiness churches? Oh, I'm going to go ahead. When we came to Joplin, there was a group. I was with the Assemblies of God at that time. Didn't last long, but I was there then. There was a holiness group. The presbyter pastored one of the holiness. We had Larry and Carol Smith were working with the youth. And they wanted to have a youth rally. They had a youth rally at one of the churches every month. They'd heard about church was growing, and people were coming in. So they wanted to have a youth rally at our church. Sharon will remember this. Larry and Carol and some of the teenagers were at church cleaning it up because they wanted everything to be clean for all of these people coming in. Well, while they were cleaning, people started coming in, busloads of people and all coming in these other churches. Well, they just decided to stay. But most of the kids, Larry and Carol included, had on some cutoffs. And they didn't know how to dress. These were a bunch of hippie kids. I got a scathing letter that they wanted a meeting with all of the pastors because they were offended. These holiness people were offended. They were so holy they couldn't attend a youth rally with people that didn't know how to dress. They were offended, and they wanted a meeting with me and I went. And I listened to them talk about all this for a while. And they wanted, you know me, they wanted pastors to be sure that the girls did not have their dresses, shorts were forbidden, but if they had not to have their dresses more than 4 inches above their knee. Now, I had sat there for a while, patiently. I've got all the patience God ever gave me because I've never used any of it. And along about here, I lost what little bit I had. And I said, you gentlemen can carry you a ruler around and go ahead and feel your teenage girls' legs trying to see how short their dress is if you want to, but I'm not going to do it. And I felt led to leave. And they were glad I left. I'm just saying, who's going to decide? You see, the problem is all of these churches, all these denominations preach that you're saved by grace, and then they want to add a whole long list of things that you have to do. Salvation is Jesus plus nothing. But religion, denominations have made the water so muddy that Christians don't know they don't understand what salvation really is anymore. Is salvation Jesus? Or is salvation some religious mixture? Some mixture of Jesus plus a bunch of religious denominational rules. How many of you ladies know you can't be sort of pregnant? I mean, you either are or you're not. Come on. Paul says salvation is Jesus plus nothing. He says you either have all law and no Jesus, or you have no law and Jesus. One or the other. You can't have it both ways. There's no middle of the road. Galatians 2:21. Let me read you that verse. I do not frustrate the grace of God. For if righteousness can't come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. If righteousness, if salvation comes by keeping the law, God's law, man's law, denominational law, or your own law, then Jesus died in vain. When Jesus on the cross said, "It is finished," it was finished. The work was done. The veil in the temple was rent. We had access to God because of the finished work of Calvary. Now, when you add anything you add, then you make the cross and the death of Jesus vain. Now, how serious is this problem of making salvation Jesus plus something? How serious is that? I'm going to tell you, Paul was angry. In fact, he was mega angry. His face was red. His jaws were tight. He was spitting and slobbering. He was mad. He was beyond the pale of anger because the Galatians were perverting the gospel. He was angry. The reason he was angry is because as terrible as unrighteousness is, as terrible as being unsaved is, self-righteousness is worse. Simply because you can reach an unrighteous person because they know they're lost. But how in the world can you reach a self-righteous person who thinks that they are so good that they're keeping the rules, therefore they don't need anything else? See, even God can't reach them. That's why he said, all of my righteousness is as filthy rags. Anything you do to make yourself righteous is a filthy rag. You know what that means? The filthy rags. That means the lepers in those days, their bodies oozing pus, they had rags they'd wrap them in. And when they took those old dirty, filthy, pussy rags off of their arm, they put them in a pile. And they had one place they could put them. And that's what he looked at. Jesus looked at that and said, all of your righteousness. He looked at the religious crowd, the Pharisees, said, all of your righteousness is like that pile of filthy, leprosy, pussed rags. Are you beginning to get the message? The danger is when you start adding rules and creeds and codes and covenants, pride takes over. I'm keeping the rules and you're not, so I'm more saved than you are. That's like hey, ladies, if you're 9 days pregnant or 9 months pregnant, you're still pregnant. If you got saved just a few minutes ago, if you said, I've been lost long enough, I'm getting saved. Did you know, as long as I've been saved, I am not a bit more saved than you are if you just ask Jesus Christ into your life. Salvation simply means that you are pregnant with the Spirit of Christ on the inside of you. And you cannot be more pregnant just because you keep some rules that somebody else doesn't keep. Whoa, this is good preaching. I like it. I like it. I think I've laid enough groundwork. I'm going to go through the rest of this real quick. What happened at the church at Galatia? They had some Jewish believers come in and try to convince them, now that you're saved, you're not just saved by Jesus. Now, if you're going to be saved, you have to be circumcised. Now, they were infecting the church. They were preaching another gospel. And it still happens today, and it's easy. Their Jesus plus something was circumcision. But it's still happening today. How do you think denominations got started? Simply because they wanted to add their own set of rules and beliefs. I don't care which denomination it is. Which one are you going to allow to determine what is Jesus plus what? If you think I'm tough, Paul said, if any man or even an angel from heaven comes and preaches anything other than what I have preached to you about the grace of God, let him be accursed. Let him be eternally damned. And then he repeats it. If any man comes in, angel, any man comes in and preaches any other gospel to you, let him be eternally damned. Now, with that in mind, some of the most wonderful religious people I have ever met were Mormons. Good people. They are good people. Never met one that was not good people. My problem is, an angel came to Joseph Smith and said, this book is not enough. Jesus is not enough. You've got to have another book. You've got to have another set of rules. Now, see, I'm sorry, but I have a problem with that. They're good people. They're good, strong, moral people. But I have a problem with their new book and their new set of rules. Jesus is not enough. That means Jesus died in vain. I hope I'm making sense. I know I'm laboring this. Number one, Jesus plus nothing perverts the gospel. It takes the good news of God's unconditional love and grace and throws the responsibility back on you, making your relationship with God dependent on something other than Jesus Christ. It's dependent on you. That's a perversion. Number two, Jesus plus something leads to legalism, it leads to pride, and it leads to self-righteousness. It's hypocrisy, which leads to judging others and rejecting people because they're not living up to your standards. And there are so many somethings today in the church world that they not only drive themselves crazy, they drive everybody around them crazy, trying to keep up with the rules. They trouble you. They trouble you. In the Sermon on the Mount, I've already said I was going to preach till I'm through. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, you've heard it said, thou shalt not kill. But I say unto you, if you call a man a fool, you've already committed murder. I'm a mass murderer. Because there's just a lot of people I think's a fool, most of them in Washington, D.C. And there's a lot of others behind pulpits, but oh, God help me. He also said, you've heard it said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, if you look upon a woman with lust in your heart, you have already committed adultery. That goes for women too. Women, you look at a man. Of course, nobody here's ever done any of that. But Jesus was not trying to make it more difficult to get to heaven. He was showing the absolute, total impossibility of keeping the law. Therefore, you had to have grace. You had to have a sacrifice because you can't do it. I'm sorry, honey, as good as you are, you're going to hell without Jesus. What? Now, if you're going to add Jesus plus something, you have to add everything that Jesus said. But that makes sense. He said, if your eye offends you, pluck it out. He said, if your hand offends you, cut it off. I've been a lot of churches in my life, Lee. I've never seen a church that had a box labeled hand box or eyeball box. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would dare to venture. In fact, I'd bet everything I got and borrow more to make a bet that every person here today has had their eye offend them at some point in their life. Of course, I don't know that. You're so goody. But if we're going to be that, why don't we put a box up in the back? Eyeball box. And if you're guilty, just pluck your eye out and drop the eyeball. Don't do that. Do not do that. I'll tell you what, if we really believed that, we would live in a kingdom of one-eyed people. And some of us would have to pluck them both out. How many of you know you can do that with just one eye? I need a vacation. Oh. Galatians 2, verse 11 through 16. I don't think I'm going to take time to read it, but yeah, I will. Chapter 2, verse 11. Peter came to Antioch. Paul's talking. I withstood him to his face because he was to be blamed. He was wrong. Because when certain ones came down from Jerusalem, from James, Peter was eating with the Gentiles, but when they showed up, he withdrew himself, separated himself, fearing them, verse 12, which were of the circumcision. And the other Jews did the same thing. Verse 14, when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said before them all, Peter, being a Jew, if you being a Jew, live after the manner of the Gentiles and not the Jews, why do you compel the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? Verse 15, we who are Jews by nature, we have the tradition, we have the upbringing, and of course, by being Jews by nature, we are not sinners like the Gentiles. We've been in the church so long, we know all the rules, so certainly we're not as bad as this other bunch that's coming in. Knowing that a man, verse 16, is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ, even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. Please read the book of Galatians and read it carefully and understand what you're reading. See, Jesus plus something separates people. That's what the denominations have done. Have the denominations united anybody? Or has it divided and separated the body of Christ? And it makes you a man-pleaser. Peter was eating with the Gentiles until the Jewish Christians, those of the circumcision, showed up. And then Paul, he can't eat with these Gentiles anymore because they're not holy enough. He's too holy to associate with these people. Now, I have never taught the grace of God without someone objecting. Now, I've never had the Mary Magdalenes object. Never had the man running naked through the tombs, a demon-possessed man. I never had him object. Never had the drug addicts or the alcoholics object. But I have had the religious denominational crowd object drastically when I preach the grace of God, the unconditional grace and love of God. So if you are having a problem with the message today, I just labeled you who you are. And you probably are self-righteous and can't be helped. Whoa, Mack, you would fit right in with Paul. I do not frustrate the grace of God. That's what he said. He said, you don't get it. You don't understand. Jesus plus something changes nothing. But Jesus plus nothing changes everything. I promise I'm through. Those of you that know me know that means absolutely nothing. Jesus died to make me righteous. He imputed to me his righteousness. I stand before God justified. Whether you approve of what I do or don't do, doesn't matter. I stand before God justified. And when I stand before God face to face, and God says, bring me the books I want to see, I want to read what this guy has done. I want to read all of this perverted, bad, wicked, terrible stuff that Mack Evans has done. Hand me the books. And he opens it up and he says, there's nothing here. He says, this can't be right. And Jesus says, yes, but I took all his sin. And I gave him my righteousness. See, God can't see me. Because when he looks at me, all he can see is Jesus. Woo! Yeah, give God a hand. I think he deserves a hand for that. Can I give you one more example? I promise I'm so near through, you won't believe I'm through when I quit. When the high priest on the Day of Atonement went into the Holy of Holies with the blood of the Lamb in a golden bowl, he was sprinkling the blood every time he took a step. He had to sprinkle the blood, so you cannot approach God without the blood. He sprinkled the blood. He stood before the mercy seat on the blood of the sacrifice. Only one piece of furniture was in the Holy of Holies. That was the Ark of the Covenant. And on top of the Ark of the Covenant was what was called the mercy seat. The word is kapareth. It means covering. The lid to the Ark of the Covenant was called the kapareth, the covering. What did it cover? What was in the ark? The law of Moses. When he sprinkled the blood on the mercy seat, the law was covered. Jesus, he says it in Galatians. I didn't get there. He says Jesus nailed the law to the cross. Whop! Whop! I do not live under the curse of the law. We have been made free from the curse of the law. Woo! Yes! Shouting ground. Yes! We have been made free. Now, I do preach a lot about what we need to do as Christians, but that is not your salvation. That's your growth. That's your walk in God. That's your witness before men. Jesus grew in the knowledge of the Lord. He grew. He had to grow. We all have to grow. That's what I want. I want a church. I want a people who are not afraid to touch any subject. If it's in the Bible or if it affects your life, I want us to look at it and see how to deal with it without fear. If I be a man pleaser, I should not be a servant of God. Salvation is Jesus plus nothing. For by grace are you saved through faith. And it's not of yourselves, it's a gift of God. Not of works, lest any man should boast. Yes, what you do and how you live affects you, and it affects other people, the people around you. And yes, there are consequences to disobeying God's law. It's self-destructive. Why did He tell you? Why did He give you the law? It wasn't for His benefit, it was for yours. Honor your father and your mother, that your days on earth may be long. Want to die young? Well, okay, help yourself. Living up to some standard, church standard, denominational standard, anybody's standard, has nothing to do with your salvation. It may be part of your growth process, but it has nothing to do with your salvation. Jock did not know. I did not tell him where I was going with this message. I don't think he even knew the title. But I was going to close the message with this. What can wash away my sin? What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow. Where's your mic? I've worn my voice out. Do it one more time.
Oh, precious is the flow that makes
Yes.
no other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus.
May I ask you one last question? Have you ever thought or had someone tell you, I would really like to be a Christian, but I just don't think I can live it? How many have ever felt that way? You see, you're listening to what some man or some denomination or someone who set rules said. You're not listening to what Jesus said. It's not, here's my point. I promise. Here's my point. You can't live it anyway. No way. But you can ask Jesus Christ into your life. If you will believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that God raised Jesus from the dead, thou shalt be saved, and there ain't enough devils in hell to do anything about it. If there's any doubt in your mind about your salvation, take care of it today. Let's pray. Father, if there's someone here who is not sure about their salvation, someone maybe that knows they're not saved because they were afraid they couldn't live it. And I'm going to ask that you, by the power of your Spirit, begin to draw them right now. There's someone here who is backslidden because they got so discouraged trying to keep rules and creeds and codes and laws and covenants. Let them come today to make their rededication and know that you love them. It's unconditional. It's not up to them. People who need a special touch here today, that they would come to you for all of their needs and let you give them your righteousness. Heads are bowed for just a minute. How many say, Mack, I need to come. I need to make that decision today. I'm tired of fighting it on my own. Let me see your hand. See your hand. Good. Someone else. You say, Mack, I need to rededicate my life. I'm tired of trying to live it on my own. How many say, Mack, I need to join the church. I haven't done that yet. Anybody? Everybody here is members. Good. Let's stand. Let's sing it one more time.
What can wash
If you have
away
special
my
need,
sin?
you want someone to pray with
Nothing
you,
but the
you
blood
come.
of Jesus.
You want to be saved or you want to rededicate
What
your life,
can make
you need
me
healing,
whole again?
you want to join the church,
But
whatever
the
you need,
blood of
you come.
Jesus. Ran